Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. Listen up, grandpas. Have you actually pulled the trigger on recording your life story? I'm talking video, baby. They want to remember your corny jokes, your crooked smile, your rugged good looks, and the jaunty bounce of your voice. What if I told you there was a really easy way to do this? Recently, I sat down and I told my life story on video. Not the whole thing, but the good stuff, the messy stuff, the funny stuff, the parts I didn't want to forget and the parts that I did not want my kids and my grandkids to forget. Planted Media made it so easy. They came to me, set up everything, and then they did some editing voodoo magic that made me look like $1 million. Go to plantedmediaco.com and tell them Rivers sent you, and you'll get a nice little Grandpa Channel discount. All right, back to the show. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Rivers, also known as Steve. And today we have a wonderful guest. He's my neighbor across the street. If you could conjure up a perfect neighbor, you would conjure up Bill Mansell, who's my friend and neighbor. I'm so grateful for Bill and his family. You guys have been here how long? 30 years. We've been here 33, going on 34. So, Bill, tell us a little bit about your story, and then tell us a bit about your family, and then I'm going to ask you about your grandparents.
Okay, well, yeah, we've been here 30 years, just about. Moved into this neighborhood with young kids, and we were the young people in the neighborhood, and I don't know what happened. Now we're the old people, and
We are the old people.
So it's been really interesting to make that shift, that dynamic. And now for a short time, we have our daughter and her husband and 2 children living with us in our basement apartment. It's been so fun.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see what children brings to the table.
Right.
Like, for example, at Halloween, we had more trick-or-treaters than we've ever had because we have little Ollie downstairs and all these little kids would come,
Really?
So it's super fun. We've actually been talking about this idea of a multi-generational home and family, and what a blessing it is. Whether you're actually living together or just having these family relationships, it's amazing. I knew all 4 of my grandparents.
Really?
And so that was a blessing for me. I was the oldest child. My sister, who was the youngest, we had 6 in our family. She didn't know any of them.
Really? So did they die when you were quite young?
The first one died when I was 9, and then the last one when I was 15.
Yeah.
But I knew them all, and there's a difference between knowing about them and knowing them. It just, you have a feeling for them as a person and their attitudes and the way that they treat you and all of that. And so they were 4 very different people. I kind of patterned my grandparenting after them because they were amazing.
So tell me about why were they amazing?
I think I learned something different from each one of them. I think about my paternal grandparents, and they were very hardworking, industrious. They had a large family, and they just kept everyone close. But I also remember personal moments. I remember having sleepovers with my grandparents and going, just me and them, and being able to go and do things, just regular stuff, like eating breakfast and raking leaves in the yard and doing things that are mundane, but to do it with your grandparents was kind of cool.
Did they have some quirks?
Well, yeah, they all did.
I do.
And I do too, I'm sure. I'm sure my grandkids will look back and think, oh man. I think that they knew who I was and that they cared about me, just made all the difference. And I think that in today's world, we have more access to grandparents than we ever have before. My son, Carl, he's 36, almost 36 now, and his first grandparents passed away just about 2 years ago. I mean, he's known his grandparents all this time, and his children, he has a 9-year-old daughter. She knows her great grandma, great grandpa. She knew who they were, and she had that experience. Great grandparents.
Wow.
That's a whole new generation we've gained in that way. So it's amazing. And, these people that are our grandparents, they had experiences and lived in a world that's very different from our world. And it forms a bridge, between that time and this time. I remember as a child, maybe 6th grade, I was assigned a project in school to interview an elderly person, this case a grandparent, and ask them what electronics they had in their house when they were children. So think about what electronics we had when we were children. Not as many as today, right? I mean, today, kids, they have everything, right?
Yeah.
So I interviewed my grandmother, and she passed away when I was 9. But I interviewed her and I asked her what electronics she had in her home when she was growing up. She said we had a fan, an electric fan, and a light bulb, and that's it.
That's it.
And I think about today that kids are so almost controlled by media and the drive to get information, and they just don't, I just don't know if kids really have the chance to be kids like we were, and so bridging those generations. I remember my daughter said to me one time, she said, "Dad, how did you live without cell phones?" And I said, "We were just fine.
We
were
fine.
just fine." And it's because we didn't know anything else. And in some ways, I think that we were able to go out and we played and we were with friends and we just did things that were real and that were live, and not like where today a lot of experiences are virtual.
That's right.
It's not necessarily bad, but it's you've lost something. So having that connection from one generation to another, and having people who can understand how things used to be, and that there's another way or another perspective, I guess, I think is really valuable for children.
So Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, not only did he know his grandfather, but his great-grandfather, right?
He knew his grandfather.
Yeah.
But his kids know their great-grandparents.
That's pretty wacky.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous of what you're describing because I've never heard the voice of either of my grandfathers. They both passed away before I was born. And so I grew up really thinking, had really good relationships with my grandmothers, and they spoke, one in particular spoke so highly of my grandfather. And so I kind of felt like he was there, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when you think about the longevity, the leap in longevity that people have, this is going to happen more often, knowing great-grandparents. And I think it's a wonderful thing.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
It's really is a blessing.
So what kind of lessons did you learn from your maternal set of grandparents, your grandfather? What was he like, Bill?
He was very kind, and I just felt a connection to him. I remember thinking it was so interesting that he used different words than I would use, than I'd heard, because as generations progress, we use different words, right? I remember he used to call everything peachy. It was really peachy.
Old-timey word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I remember distinctly is that my grandparents in their 70s, they decided to go on a service mission where they left their home, went to New York, lived in a little apartment, and stayed there and participated in all kinds of activities, doing service. They were in a pageant that they had back there. And they just did a lot of great things for people. And that was back in the days when, grandparents were like old people that you went to visit. They didn't go do things like that. And I remember that when they did that, I mean, we missed them a lot, but it was a great example to me. It was something that instilled in me a desire, which I think we hopefully will be able to fulfill, is when we get to that stage to go serve.
Yeah.
To go leave it's great to be with the grandkids, but to be someone that sets an example to your grandkids. Like, I'm someone who's willing to leave my comfortable home,
take time out,
and go and serve. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what a great example
Yeah.
that was.
Going back to what you said about words having like peachy. One time I was out with my boys and I described a car as it looked like a jalopy. They laughed like uncontrollably. I was speaking Martian or something like that. It's fun to see the generational markers, word markers, and how they look at things differently. Your dad, what year would he have been born in?
39.
So the tail end sort of kind of the depression. My dad was born in 32 and I can see a lot of, the depression. It had a marked effect on him. This is very interesting. And did you enjoy as a kid listening to stories of grandparents?
I loved it. And I think as grandparents, one of our jobs is to create a connection with each child, like a personal relationship. And I think that's more important than gifts or even traditions. Sometimes it's just for each child to know, I have somebody who loves me unconditionally. And that way, when they get to their teenage years where they hate everybody, parents are stupid and whatever, right? I think they still will have
that
a connection to their grandparents. And they're going to need that to navigate those years, because things are so much more confusing nowadays than they were before.
Right.
And so to have that solid feeling that, hey, here are 2 people or 4 people who love me unconditionally, who I could tell them anything, that's valuable.
So let me throw a hypothetical situation. You can turn it into, a real case. But let's say you have a grandchild, or, a granddaughter or a grandson who you're trying to connect with, maybe you haven't quite hit it on all cylinders yet. How would you, as a grandfather, go about trying to create a better relationship with this grandchild?
It's a good question. And it's, everybody's different. So, but I think everyone wants to be loved. They want to be loved. And so that's it. You just take an interest, be to their events. You give them hugs when you see them. You just do the things that instill a close connection. I think they will all come around. I think they will all, at least, I only have 6, so I don't have as many of the people you've had on your channel. But I believe for every one of them, I have a close relationship because they are so important to me. And I think that maybe that's it. Maybe that's the answer is, if they're important to you, then they will feel that.
Yeah, well, I think that, and you can't fake that.
No.
If you're just kind of with your phone in one hand and kind of, and you're looking back and forth. My daughter, our producer, I'd come home from work some days, hard day at the office, back when he actually had newspapers, and I loved reading a newspaper. And so I'd sit on the couch and I would read the newspaper. Well, she wasn't going to have any of that. And she ran across the room and flew through the newspaper, so her face was right up in front of me. And it only took a couple of times. She had a sly smile on her face. She crumpled my newspaper. But I just thought, that's something I can do later.
Right.
And it shows that she was, that she was more important than the newspaper.
Yeah.
I think we have these little decisions that we make that maybe aren't so little, that show a grandchild, obviously, or a son or daughter, that you count more to them than things that are sort of childish, really, or non-consequential, I think. So tell me about your dad as a grandpa.
He was an amazing grandfather. He wanted everyone to be together always. With him, it was always like, let's just get everyone together. And even now, my sister just called me the other day and she said, it's a year since Grandpa died, or since Dad died, so let's get everyone together. And I thought, well, that's him passing it on to the next generation, because just loved that feeling of the whole family all together. But he also spent one-on-one time with the children, and taking the time to do that, it's not always easy, especially when there's a big group of them. A crowd, as my grandma used to say. But taking that time one-on-one, I think sometimes we think we have to do these, take them to Disneyland or do these big things, and really just listening, and spending time and sitting together and talking about whatever is great. I think about our dear friend Selma Yagi, who just passed away, and at her funeral there was a parade of grandchildren that came by, all different situations, all different challenges, all different talents and abilities, and she loved them all. And when I heard them speak, they all knew that she loved them, and they all thought she was their favorite, and they were her favorite. And to me, that is what it's about.
It's hard too, you know. They're speaking from experience. There are some grandkids that I just naturally sort of, that might be common interest. Like I have a couple of grandsons who are nuts about sports, you know. Okay, you know, tee me up. I know
Right.
something about that. But then, you know, trying to find the direct path to that, my little grandchild's heart. And I'm surprised by what that is sometimes. And sometimes it's a shared interest or hobby or something, but sometimes it's like completely out of the blue, you know. Has there been anything about being a grandpa, Bill, that's been surprising to you?
Well, yeah, mostly because I don't feel like a grandparent. I feel like I'm about, 20 still.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think we all feel that way in some ways. And so to think of yourself as that person that I respected so much as a child is very interesting and very different. And I see in myself some of the same things that I saw in my grandparents, where they would just be drawn to their grandkids, but at the same time, when the whole house is full of grandkids and they're all running around and it's chaos, getting a little
out of control.
I guess a little irritated.
Yeah.
I'll never forget one time. We had a family party at my paternal grandparents' house, and everybody was there. So they had 5 children, and all of their children. I mean, it was just chaos.
Yeah.
And I was one of the younger grandchildren, and they had this beautiful backyard, and they had these bushes that were like, we used to call them snowball bushes. They had little flowers that looked like a white snowball. They were beautiful, and my grandpa took really good care of his yard. He really was meticulous that way. Well, they were all in the house, and a bunch of us grandkids decided we were going to have a snowball fight with those snowball bushes. And we did, and we'd grab those flowers and we'd throw them at each other. The yard was destroyed. Okay, just totally. And we didn't know, we were just really little kids, right? Well, my grandmother, she came out and she didn't say a word. My parents got after me, but she didn't say a word. And I always remember thinking that was pretty cool, that she was able to keep her cool, even though we had literally destroyed their yard.
What was your grandpa's reaction?
I don't remember because he wasn't right there, but
maybe he went downstairs and started screaming in a closed door.
Probably screaming into a pillow or something. But he, I learned a lot from him. He was the last one who passed away. He was so crippled with arthritis. And he had been a really active person, very accomplished. He'd been a church leader, a bishop for years and years and years. He was a golfer. He'd been a golfer. In his last years, he couldn't do any of that. It was all taken away. And he would come over to our house, and my dad would be working in the yard, and he would get a chair and he would just sit there and we'd talk to him. But his hands were so crippled and gnarled from the arthritis that he couldn't really do much of anything. He could hardly pick up a spoon to eat with. And yet he always had something positive to say. He was always kind to us. It was an example of enduring to the end. That's what we all have to, we're all going there, right? And so he just was someone that he just kept going, and he endured to the end. And yet even in that state, he wasn't able to crawl on the ground and play with us, but we knew he cared.
I'll tell you, one thing that shocked me as a grandpa is how much my grandkids love being with each other. That's the cousins, but I'm shocked. There's thrills and spills and cries and, bursts of laughter and chaos galore. The amount of joy that they have of doing the Indianapolis 500 route inside if the weather's not good outside, and then going outside. It's been so nice. I look at them and the joy, that they exhibit with each other. I'm just shocked. I was one of the oldest cousins on my mom's side, and so I thought my cousins, who are terrific people, I thought they were giant pains in the butt. And yet they got along really well. And, I was too cool for school, but I just have been so shocked at how much they love being with each other and how much they love playing with each other. That was kind of a real surprise for me. So I'm going to ask you to use your imagination on this one, Bill. Let's say that I'm somehow able to teleport your dad to this chair. And instead of you talking to your neighbor across the street, if your dad were here, it's a two-part question. What would you tell your dad? And what do you think your dad would say to you?
Wow. I think he would say to me how important it is to keep the family close and to teach them what's right and to forge with each person a connection with Christ. That's what he would say.
That's fabulous advice.
And he would tell me he's proud of me, which I don't know why he would be, but he always would say that. And what was the second part? What I asked him?
What would you say to him?
What would I say to him? Well, I would thank him for being such an amazing father. I mean, he was an example to me throughout my life of someone who just stayed the course every day. And he was a hard worker, and he was one that struggled for every penny that he earned and everything he did. He was a sixth grade teacher for when I was young, and then he became a principal. But you don't earn a lot of you don't get rich on a teacher's salary or principal. But he just taught me how to work and how to make sure you get things done and be responsible. So those are lessons that I'll never forget. Thank him for being so kind to me. I mean, there were times when I did such stupid things.
I want to know. No, I don't want to know in particular.
Should I go through the list?
We'll create a highlight reel for it.
Stupid things, and he was kind about it. I'll never forget when I was young, probably 11, 12, I decided I wanted to earn some money. So I wanted to get a paper route. And that's what kids did in those days, and so I talked to some people, I got it arranged, and I knew that when I got that paper route, I was going to have to deliver those papers like at 5:30 in the morning every morning. But what I didn't really get as an 11-year-old was that was every morning, every single morning.
Without fail.
Without fail, you had to get up and do it. And I remember every morning, my dad was up there with me, folding papers, putting the rubber bands on, helping me to get that big bag with all those papers in it. I mean,
back?
Yeah, front and back. And I was a skinny little kid. So, I mean, putting that thing on me, I'd kind of waver a little bit and he'd stabilize me and send me out the door.
Come rain or shine.
Yeah, and we'd do it. But he was always there. And I guess some fathers would just say, well, you signed up for this, go do it. He was there. I remember a few mornings when I turned off the alarm and just didn't get up. And I would wake up like in a panic, like, oh no. And I remember there were days when my dad delivered those papers for me. So I'm grateful for that.
A couple of other things while we wind this down. I think that grandparents, the idea of fountains and bridges come to my mind. That I think grandparents and grandfathers in particular, because my wife does a much better job of being a grandparent than I do, and I have a lot to learn. But, as a grandpa, serve as a fountain of peace in very unpeaceable, if there's such a word, times. How do you do that, Bill?
I think as I look at my grandparents, it was mostly example. It was mostly they just did the things that they expected me to do. And so how could you go too far astray? Because, what if grandma and grandpa found out, right? So there is that. There is the just being there, being an example and doing the things that should be done. And that we're not perfect. I mean, but we are we are trying our best to lead and connect at the same time. There are pieces of advice that we can give. I mean, having been through this last 62 years that I've lived, I've learned a few things. And sometimes I think kids, when they turn 6 or 7, they think they've got it all figured out, right? Yeah. And they're basing that on their experiences, what they've experienced, but they haven't had the experience that you have had. And so to be able to say, here's another perspective, here's something you should think about, I think that's super, super valuable.
I do too. But I think that a grandpa needs to be peaceable himself. He needs to be at peace with the world, even though the world is like totally out of control. But I think that a grandpa can do a huge disservice to his grandchildren by being agitated and snarky and just kind of bunch of doomcoffs this, stupid people this. I just think that we've got to be really, really careful how we project. There needs to be an air, I think, of confidence, even though our confidence might be lagging just a little bit, because we see the world. You keep up on current events, I keep up on current events, and they're not great things going.
It's a jungle out there.
It is a jungle out there with moments of wonderful respite and peace and lollipops and rainbows, and then all of a sudden that comes shattering down. And then I guess this is a related question, and we'll maybe end with this, Bill, is as a grandfather, how do you share your faith with your grandkids? Got a great idea.
Well, I'm doing the best that I can, but let me go back to the first question.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easy as we get older, we get a little, as men, we've seen a lot. Sometimes we've been disillusioned. Sometimes we've, seen disappointments out there and things. And it's easy to get, jaded or start thinking like, oh, this younger generation, that if we leave the world to them, it's going to go crazy,
Young whippersnappers.
They don't know what they're doing. It's just easy to get a little grouchy and crotchety. And then these little amazing people come into our lives, these grandchildren. And they're excited about everything. They're, in my view, straight from heaven. And they just bring this wonderful, soft part into our lives. And it helps us to become better, to have a better feeling about the future. And so I think our job is to be positive, but it doesn't really come from us. It comes from them. We learn it from them. So I think a lot of times we think about what we can give to our grandchildren, but what they give to us is an immense amount of joy,
right,
hope for the future, and peace. And so it's both ways.
Yeah, it is. I hadn't thought about them being a source of joy and optimism, but maybe they're here to help us just as much as we're here to help them. But I can see where grandkids would get kind of bogged down, especially if they're just kind of in their media, and just...
Yeah, and there's so much pressure on kids nowadays, nowadays the kids, they're in preschool and they're learning stuff. And I have a granddaughter who's 9, she's doing fractions and geometry, and she's only in the 3rd grade. It's just amazing. When I was in kindergarten, we had nap time and cookie time. And I don't think we learned much of anything. It was just a different world.
It was.
And we were allowed to just be children. Now kids they're under so much pressure to perform and be a certain way, and things that I think as grandparents we can bring some stability and softness to that, and just let them be kids.
So going back kind of finally to this idea of how do we as grandpas share our faith with grandkids? What are some of the ideas that you have? The big one is by example. If grandpa is grumpy and crotchety, it's not exactly like you're not modeling the Savior by any stretch of the imagination. But, have you found anything that has been helpful? How do you and Marquette and I suppose we have to watch not stepping on the feet of our kids, the parents of the grandkids too. which that introduces kind of a whole new level of complexity sometimes. But I mean, I want more than anything. I want my grandkids to have a relationship with Heavenly Father and with Jesus. And boy, if they have that, they can weather just about anything. So I'm all ears with people, with ideas that people might have with help me share my faith with my grandkids.
Well, it's a good question. I remember sitting with my grandparents
Mm-hmm.
and having them tell me stories about Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
or stories from the Bible, or stories from scriptures. And of course, when it's your grandparents, you remember, you listen, and that, that they just meant something. And so I think that's one thing, is just not being afraid to talk about the things that you believe. I think that we can get into a trap of being a little too overbearing or pushing too hard. Everyone has their own spiritual journey to walk. And I think the most important thing we can do is they know of our faith, and I know of our commitment, and they know that we have a relationship with Christ, and we want that for them too.
Right.
But if we are overbearing or requiring specific actions or specific things, that can actually turn into a negative, I think. So I think the most important underlying principle is that unconditional love, that we're always there for them, no matter what, as they walk their journey, and whatever that journey is. Yeah. And I know people who have walked a very wild path, and as they had all these experiences, finally came to their senses, I guess, in some ways, have returned to a measure of faith. But it was a long journey, and that's okay. I think that's part of what life is figuring that out for ourselves.
So one last question for you. I'm sorry I've been putting you into these sort of modes, but I'd love to hear what you might say about this. What would a 62-year-old Bill Mansell say to a 32-year-old Bill Mansell about the upcoming grandchildren, children, and grandchildren? What advice would you have, not only to yourself, going back in time, but to young families that are just hanging on by, they're just holding on for dear life, and are there things to look forward to? What would you say?
Well, if I was advising my former self, I would say you need to chill out a little more, because it's so easy when you're in the midst of, young kids and activities and bills and work, and to just get caught up in all of that and to not savor the moment. And these little children come into our lives, and we think they're going to always be there, and that fast, and they're gone. So just enjoy the moments with them. Enjoy those moments. I know that I have regrets myself of times when I had things that were important and busy and work, and could have spent more time with my children. And I would say to any young father, take that time, because they'll be gone tomorrow.
Blink of an eye.
Blink of an eye. Yeah. And then the other thing I would say is, it's going to work out okay. It's going to work. It's all going to work out. So just take a deep breath and just keep going, and just know that there's another whole, grandparenting, as you, I'm sure have talked about on this show, it's way more fun than parenting ever was.
I would totally agree with you.
Yeah, when you're the parent, you're responsible for these kids. Yeah. When you're the grandparent, you just spoil them and send them home.
Yes.
No, not really, but you have a different relationship. You're able to relate to them in this wonderful way, and you have a special place. Most kids only have 4 grandparents their whole life, and it's a rare thing. And many have fewer than that of people that they can remember or can connect with. So what a blessing to be that person, that important person in a child's life. So I think I would say that.
It's so hard to, I agree with everything you said, but you just feel like everything is so important, and, things are flying out of control, and you've got to try to rope everything in. And it's tough. It's a fun, but it's a hard time of life in many ways, I think. Do you have any other thoughts, Bill, on being a grandpa? Want to share with us? Is there anything that you feel like has been bouncing around in your head or your heart?
Well, no, I can't think of anything else other than just to say that being a grandfather is an amazing privilege. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to be that special person for these children as they come along. And so, making sure that you are proactive, I think, is important to plan activities, plan things where the family is together, plan, just opportunities to be alone with them once in a while. I loved sleepovers as a child with my grandparents, and so we're trying to bring that into our grandparenting. I know some grandparents have group things where all the grandkids come over, and that's fun. And if it's one-on-one, that's fun. Just anything you can do to not just let things happen, but to be proactive and organizing it, I think is a good thing.
I don't know about you, but I've gotten tons of great advice from Bill. I knew that this was going to happen. I look forward to having you come over. Thanks for being such a great neighbor and a great grandfather and a great husband and father. And I'm so grateful for our friendship.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. And thank you. And we'll be back with more great people like Bill. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Leave a review, share it with a friend, or better yet, tell your favorite grandpa. We're on a mission to gather 1 million grandpas, storytellers, wisdom keepers, and lovable wild cards. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here.